about to join Don Neuen, co-host of Cowboy Logic Radio, and Denise Simon, host of the Denise Simon Experience, for a weekly situation report, or SITREP. 18 hours a day, Denise Simon lives her life as an Intel Analyst. 18 hours a day, Don Neuen lives his life in the world of rock and roll. 1 hour each day, Neuen receives a daily SITREP from Simon. Welcome to the Drive Time Situation Report. Fasten your seatbelt. You're now in Don Neuen's car, and he is calling in for his SITREP.
Smello.
Denise Simon, it's your buddy Don Neuen, ready for a drive time sit rep, girl. What's up?
Well, it's Biden calls it Super Thursday, but it's really Tuesday. He looks like he's.
I didn't know whether it was Super Thursday or Taco Tuesday. I didn't know what the heck it was today.
He's got a handful of states under his belt already, interestingly enough. What's particularly interesting is he has Virginia, and our little friend Bloomberg spent a pile of money in Virginia to lose it.
All right, well, hold that thought. Let's welcome everybody to tonight's really big show. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Drive Time Sit Rep. My name is Don Neuen. I am driving home after a laborious day at work. I have called in to Denise Simon, who is going to update me on everything that I missed today while I was at the grind working so diligently. On the other end of this call is the stellar Denise Simon. She's the host of the Denise Simon Experience. You can listen to her show on whatever network or radio station you are listening to this show. Now, Denise is going to timestamp the show, but before she does so, Merry Christmas, Denise.
Merry Christmas.
Happy Easter.
Which is coming up soon, isn't it?
Indeed it is. And while we're at it, let's get the third holiday that the liberals want to eliminate from existence. Happy Thanksgiving, Denise.
Yes, happy Thanksgiving.
All right, so timestamp it. Let's get after it.
Well, it's 8:28 p.m. on the 3rd of March in the year of our Lord 2020.
Excellent. Excellent, Denise. Well done. Job well done.
Thanks.
So, hey, listen, we can't get into this too much, but I do want to ask you on the air, just so that I can say that I've asked you on the air. Did you like my suggestion to your son about what to do in the event of the coronavirus?
Yeah, I in fact, I woke up my husband. I was reading it aloud to him, and he's like, "What? What?"
Ladies and gentlemen, because we have to abide by FCC regulations, we cannot discuss what I suggested to Denise's son to do to prepare himself and basically vaccinate himself from the coronavirus that is taking Tampa on in an absolute storm.
Well, right. It's really not. It's just that...
I know. I was being facetious.
Here, as a sidebar, my younger son, he gets politics right, but he hates, let me put it this way. He hated politics. He used to ridicule me because I'm out here all by myself. He says, saving the world and it can't be saved, blah, 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 blah. Well, in the last 2 years, all by himself, he's decided that he's going to get informed. And he is informed, and he's got it. He already had it, but, he's like really getting it. And now I'm seeing him do posts on Facebook that have got me with a head tilt here. Like, I cannot believe that he's posting this stuff, because he used to ridicule me so much.
I know what you're doing. You're sitting back and you're going, my little baby's grown up.
Well, he should, because he's 35 years old. But
hey, listen. Hey, better late than never. All right. So at any rate, ladies and gentlemen, we can't tell you the real punchline of this.
No, that would be rough.
Event. Yeah, it would be really irresponsible and probably the last show we do. But I am glad that it got a chuckle out of Denise Simon and that she thought highly enough of my creativity to wake her husband up while he was probably sleeping to read the post to him.
I did.
I'm flattered. All right. So let's talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Okay. Well, I'm going to tell you a story. And if you think you understand the deep state, and if you think you understand things in Washington, D.C., I'm here to tell you that you just don't. So I'm going to take you back a week or so because we had this one particular juror in the Roger Stone trial by the name of Tamika Hart. And this juror was highly in question because we clearly found out when the verdict was written or verdict was given on Roger Stone's case that he was guilty, and then there was a big brouhaha about the sentencing recommendations and so forth and so on. That Tamika, some people out there decided to start looking at this Tamika Hart because she made herself well known. And she had previously been posting a whole bunch of things on social media that were anti-Trump, anti-Stone, everything else. In fact, she bragged that she was on her fourth jury. So most people try and get out of jury duty. She wants in it, and she wanted in on this case. And it appears that she lobbied to be the jury foreman because she's got so much experience at it. But here's the bigger part of the story. There is a fellow on Twitter by the name of Mike Cernovich. Now, Mike is kind of a citizen journalist researcher. And when the verdict was given and the sentence was given, Mike, who I follow him and I've looked at some of his work, he decided that he wanted to get what is known as a voir dire. And a voir dire is a legal term, what is known as preliminary questions for jurors that they have to fill out before they are chosen for jury duty or dismissed from jury duty. So he has filed a motion with the court to get the voir dire, the preliminary questions of the jurors in the Roger Stone case. Isn't that fascinating? So he did this.
I need to ask a question, or I'm going to forget this question. Was all of this known and disclosed to Stone's defense team? And if so, why was she not stricken from the jury roster or the potential roster?
We don't know if it was known because nobody has said so, but we have to assume that it wasn't known.
Well, if she was active as she proclaims to be and appears to be on social media, and any of this took place prior to this trial, somebody didn't do their due diligence.
Precisely.
On Stone's team.
Precisely. So now, as of yesterday, U.S. District Judge Amy Berman Jackson decided, because of the motion filed by Michael Cernovich to get the preliminary questions, Amy Berman Jackson has decided that she's going to provide the jurors with pro bono legal counsel. Now, why would she do that?
Hey, whenever you say her name, you got to say it like this: Amy Berman Jackson. We need more of a pregnant pause in between the three names, okay?
No, but anyway.
Come on, play along.
All right. So she's decided that she's going to provide the free lawyer for the jurors, more than one, out of the interest of justice and full and fair resolution.
Yeah, that sounds legit.
Okay, so what she did.
Does she have the power to do this?
Well, she did it.
That wasn't my question.
I don't know. You gotta ask, somebody smarter than me.
Okay.
Lots of people out there that are like that. So she went over to the law firm Sidley Austin, and she chose Alan Raoul to be the lawyer, appointed pro bono lawyer to protect and defend the jurors on the Roger Stone case. Now, Mr. Raoul is a member of the American Bar Association's Cybersecurity Legal Task Force and the Center for Democracy. Before his time at Sidley Austin, he was the general counsel for the Office of Management and Budget, as well as for the Department of Agriculture. And during the Reagan administration, he was co-counsel for the Reagan White House. Okay, so I'm setting this up. Now, why would this be an issue? Well, because Raoul doesn't seem to like President Trump, and he doesn't seem to like Attorney General Bill Barr either. How do I know that? Well, there's an organization that looks like it was launched in late 2018 by the name of Checks and Balances. And the lawyers, it's all lawyers on that little organization, Checks and Balances, and it's made up of allegedly conservative libertarian lawyers. And Alan Raoul is a part of that. So what's the issue here? Well, the Checks and Balances organization was created by what is known as, what he says he is, a conservative attorney, George Conway. Does that name ring a bell with anybody out there listening?
Every day, that name rings a bell.
So it must be real fun in that White House right about now, because George Conway is the, I think now, estranged husband of Kellyanne Conway.
Oh, she finally dumped him?
Well, I'm hearing that they're separated, but that's unconfirmed. Okay, so George Conway obviously has some major distaste, not only for Donald Trump, but it appears that he has the same thing for his wife and the mother of his children.
Apparently.
So George Conway created this little organization called Checks and Balances, of which some interesting lawyers are over there, including the former Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, Tom Ridge. And this little organization, Checks and Balances, has written some interesting letters, one endorsing Adam Schiff in his quest to pursue the truth about President Trump withholding military aid to Ukraine. That's one. They clearly don't like the border policies that Trump has had his agencies within his administration do when it comes to immigration. But anyway, they've written some pretty nasty letters. So there's 14.
It sounds like a group of Republican globalists that really belong back in one of the Bush administrations.
Well, there's 14 members, and they're prominent lawyers and law professors and private practitioners and former government lawyers saying that they are standing up for the principles of constitutional governance. We believe in the rule of law, the power of the truth, the independence of criminal justice system, the imperative of individual rights, and the necessity of civil discourse. We believe these principles apply regardless of the party or persons in power. We believe in a government of laws and not of men, quote unquote. That came from their website. Sounds all swell, huh? But hold on.
Well, yeah, until you realize they don't mean it.
Well, there's another lawyer in the group who is one of the founding members, and his name is Orrin Kerr. And interestingly enough, he happens to be a professor at the University of Southern California Law School, and he's a formal trial attorney for the Department of Justice. And he's been pretty active over there on Twitter, a very frequent critic of the president. In fact, he sent out some nasty grams when it comes to President Trump. So, our little friend here, Alan Raoul, the now free lawyer for the jurors, signed a previous checks and balances letter last October that was quite supportive of the Trump impeachment and critical of President Trump when it came to withholding military aid. So, isn't the intrigue a whole lot more incestuous in Washington, D.C.?
Let me ask this question, and this is a question many of you may have already heard Dan Bongino ask countless times, or make a statement, I should say, that Bongino has made countless times. Remember the names. They all know each other, and they've all got something to hide. So if I use that statement, Denise, with this collective of Trump-hating alleged Republican lawyers, especially with this Raoul guy that's going to be defending these jurors, which I find to be suspect right there. What is it that they're hiding? What are these Republicans trying to hide?
I don't think they're hiding. It's right there for anybody to go find.
Well, what are they hiding then?
They're not hiding. They're not hiding anything. They have contempt for President Trump and Attorney General Barr, period, end of report. And anything connected to them.
But here's the thing. It is illogical to have contempt for Trump or Barr if you are a conservative or if you are a libertarian or if you are a Republican. It is illogical unless you have absolutely no control over your emotions that have run amok on you.
Don't shoot the messenger, but they're not hiding anything. I mean, it's right out there.
I'm not so sure of that.
Okay.
And here's why I say that. I want to go back to the comment of it's illogical for anybody that is a conservative, a libertarian, a Republican, someone that loved the era of Ronald Reagan, to foment such hatred and disdain for Donald Trump. He's the closest thing that we've ever had to a Reagan, and in some areas, he's exceeding Reagan. I have to think the only logical answer is that there is something that they are trying to hide or protect, even as Republicans or alleged conservatives. And it's got to be a globalism event or transaction or number of, and I'm going to point to Ukraine and I'm going to point to China. These guys somehow must be involved in this. You can't have common sense and logic and hold the positions that these type of people have and the disdain they have for Trump. You may not like his posts and his tweets and his candid response and his off-the-cuff responses. But I've said it before on this show, Denise, and I know you agree with me. You can take the president out of Queens. You're not going to get Queens out of the president. It's in his DNA to behave like he does. And I, quite frankly, most of the time, enjoy it. But there's something that these Republicans that are going against him have got to be hiding. Now I'm going to get off my soapbox. You got 5 minutes left before we got to go to break.
Well, Little Miss Judge, U.S. District Judge Jackson, apparently came to a very narrow group to select attorneys from, that she selected Alan Raoul to defend these jurors. Now, I don't know why they really need defense, except that Miss Hart obviously had some issues. And so she's going to get a free lawyer out of this. Meanwhile, when I think it was last week, this judge read aloud in the courtroom several of the more divisive tweets by President Trump and made several references to Tucker Carlson's show when he went off on what they did to Roger Stone. Now,
Right.
she has not yet ruled on the motion for Roger Stone and his lawyer for a new trial. That has not been decided yet. And she's expressing concern for the safety of these jurors. So there is your story that I wanted to begin with, that it's really an incestuous thing when it comes to lawyers and judges inside Washington, D.C.
And media and politicians. They're all incestuous.
We really don't have a clue about things that go on in the background. I think this is a remarkable story. I think it's a stunning story that she's done this and made this choice.
Well, I agree. I would love to challenge you with digging deeper and finding out why. What is it?
If I knew why, I'd say it. I mean, there would be things that
I know, but I'm saying dig a little deeper. That's what you're best at, is digging in and finding the answers. Because you got to agree with me that the hatred by conservatives, Republicans, and libertarians, alleged libertarians and Republicans and conservatives against Trump, is a bizarre, strange, unfounded behavior based on what this man has done. They've got to be hiding something. They've got to know something. And for George Conway to be doing what he's been doing ever since Trump took office at the expense of his marriage, there's got to be something Conway's hiding. Got to be. People don't behave like this if they have nothing to hide.
I have not seen in all of this time, I have not seen anything that has bubbled to the surface where there is some foreign globalist interest or other kind of interest. Now, if this law firm was Perkins Coie, then I would know the answer, but it's not. It's Sidley Austin.
Dig deeper. There's got to be, you've always said it, there's got to be more to the story.
Well, we may, in fact, the only connection I can necessarily make as a knee-jerk reaction is that Sidley Austin was one of the original law firms of Michelle Obama, if we remember that. Furthermore,
shocking development. That's crazy
but that was
talk, Denise.
But that was so long ago.
Doesn't matter.
They're a huge law firm. I believe that they
King and Spalding out of Atlanta, and you know what's going on with that.
Well, I'm just putting it out there for the, if the listeners want to take it someplace, that's fine. I'm just giving you a story that if you don't think that things aren't funky, they're funky, and they're funkier than we think.
I agree with you, and that's why I'm pushing you to get into the weeds.
I'm not going to spend any more time.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the Drive Time Sit Rep. We got to go to one of these unsightly bottom of the hour breaks because we're on a roll, but we have to do it because we're told that we have to do this. So you're listening to the Drive Time Sit Rep. We're going to be back in 2 minutes.
Check us out on the web at cowboylogic.us.
Welcome back to the Drive Time Sit Rep, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Don Neuen. I am the co-host of Cowboy Logic Radio. On the other end of this fascinating and stimulating conversation is the stellar Denise Simon, the host of the Denise Simon Experience. Before we went to break, I was begging Denise to dig into the weeds on this because I am convinced that what is going on both sides of the aisle, in the swamp, in D.C., in the deep state, whatever you want to call it, in the media, in politics, in the legal arena, with judges, is they all know each other and they're covering something up. They got something to hide. And I need to hat tip Bongino because he's beat that into my frontal lobe by saying it so many times. Anyhow, where do you want to go now, Denise?
Well, I almost don't know where to go here at this point, except that today I will mention yet another kind of incestuous case before the Supreme Court. Now, this one's rather remarkable because the Supreme Court is heard a case today, Consumer Financial Protection Board, SCOTUS. In 2009, I think it was, Little Miss Elizabeth Warren was a professor over at Harvard at the time, and she concocted this thing called the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And for a short period of time, President Trump put Mick Mulvaney in charge of that particular, what is known as a government independent agency. I remember he saying about a year and a half ago, maybe longer than that, that this was one of the most corrupt independent agencies that government pays for. Now, and he's right.
No doubt.
Now, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is there to, how do I say this? Kind of regulate banks, student loans, cryptocurrencies, payday lenders, credit unions, debt collectors, all those kinds of things. And Elizabeth Warren at the time lobbied to be head of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And she was going to be. Obama was going to put her in there. But then he saw the opposition by the Republicans and took her out of the running. And in a recess appointment, he put in David Cordray. Is that his name, Cordray? And then that went to court because there wasn't a recess appointment. And he couldn't do that. So it went to court. He was withdrawn from that. He was taken out of there. And then later, with some control of the House again, he did get the votes and he became head of it. He later resigned and it's now belongs to somebody else. But here's the point of the thing. The way that the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is designed is that any of those financial sector entities, the payday lenders and the mortgage lenders and foreclosures and debt collectors and student loans and cryptocurrency, if there's any kind of complaints, they can't go to court. They have to go to a panel that is mobilized by the Bureau itself to hear the complaint. And then they rule on whether it is legitimate or not. Now, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau can go to a company, let's say a payday lender, and say, we don't like the way you're doing business, so we're going to impose a $100,000 fine on you. But this poor cat that has this can't do anything. He can go back and he can file a reverse complaint and go, but, and then they go, no, well, we decided it's even worse, so now you owe us $7 million. Now,
so
the president...
there's no independent accountability to it at all.
Well, it is independent. That's what it is. It is independent. There's no oversight. There is no... the House Government Oversight and Reform Committee can't do anything. The President of the United States can't even remove the head of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. It is its own law. It is its own court. It is its own everything. And who created this but Elizabeth Warren and Barack Obama?
They all know each other, and they've got something to hide.
So, today before the Supreme Court, the argument is if this Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, is so legitimate, it should be able to have oversight and checks and balances of the judiciary, of the legislative branch, the whole checks and balances thing. We're going back to the checks and balances thing, not to be confused with the first case, the first story I told. And so in court today, two interesting Supreme Court judges got their feathers ruffled about how the case was being presented. Would you care to guess who those two were?
Sotomayor and Kagan.
Actually, Sotomayor and Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
I didn't know she was on active duty status. Sorry.
So this one is really quite interesting, and we will necessarily see where this happens to be. In fact, I interviewed yesterday for my own radio show Oliver Dunford, one of the lawyers over at Pacific Legal Foundation, who wrote an amicus brief about this particular case. And so we will see where this ends up. But a previous case that actually hit the U.S. Court of Appeals on this, which is the reason it has gone to the Supreme Court, was Justice Brett Kavanaugh when he was on the appeals court. You see how this stuff just all recycles? So
Yep.
It's already been on his desk once before. But this is a fascinating thing here, because one of the questions is how many other agencies, quote, air quote, independent government agencies do we have that are designed like the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau that operates all on its own and nobody can do anything other than, I think, is the FCC. Is it the FCC? I think so. Who manages the internet? Who's that one? Is that the FCC?
That would be Al Gore.
So, Elena Kagan, she did come out today and she said, to compare the removal, this is her quote, to compare the removal to a nuclear bomb, and said that there were many mechanisms outside of removal with which a president could control an independent agency, which there really isn't. But anyway, she goes on to say, Letter later pursued the argument, noting that the president has all sorts of ways that influence agencies. Sometimes you have a situation where a president convinces a Supreme Court justice to leave that post. It's like, where is this coming from, Elena Kagan? So we don't know where this will necessarily go, except that Ruth Bader Ginsburg said, the cause for removal provision is a very modest restraint on the president, that, he's restrained from doing this. But
all right, I need to ask you a question that goes back to the first thing we talked about tonight, which is Amy Berman Jackson assigning free legal counsel to all of the jurors. Who is going to represent the guy that actually got these documents?
Or is requesting the documents? He has an interesting lawyer. He happens to have, and it's a lawyer's name that I've seen. I can't pronounce it. But his lawyer is kind of interesting. Do you remember Futos, whatever his name is, the one that allegedly killed his wife? They found all kinds of evidence that he killed his wife. The children are living with the mother-in-law, and he tried to kill himself in his garage by having the car engine going with the garage door down, and then he was supposed to show up in court, and he didn't show up in court, and the marshals went over to his house and then took him over to the hospital, and he never recovered.
No, but it sounds like something that I would watch on headline news in the middle of the night if I can't find anything else to watch.
Was
that a laugh?
No, it was more of a, I don't know what. The lady's name. The lady's name.
It sounded like a partial laugh.
Yeah, it was.
Oh,
Jennifer Dulos. Do you remember who she is?
No.
This was quite the story.
But she has no idea who I am either.
This happened in Connecticut. Okay. She has, I think, 3 kids. They had 3 kids together. She went missing. She took the kids off to school, and nobody ever saw her again. They were working on a contentious divorce, and I think it came down to a custody battle. But her husband, Fotis, Fotis, also had an accomplice / girlfriend.
Wow, the clues are popping up every place, Denise.
So the kids ended up with the mother-in-law in New York, and Fudos has been arrested a couple of times. Apparently there's a bunch of money there. He got out on bond, and then because they were treating this certainly as a murder case because they had all kinds of evidence. But anyway, the lawyer for at the time that was defending Fotis Dulos is the same lawyer that Michael Chernovich has. Kind of your hippie, long ponytail wearing lawyer.
Yeah, typical defense lawyer with the, yeah, I get it. All right. And I probably know who you're talking about.
It's a fascinating case. It was really a fascinating case, but it's kind of over with because he did die of, what is it called when you try and kill yourself?
Yeah, carbon monoxide poisoning.
Thank you, carbon monoxide poisoning. I couldn't think of it. He did die of that. They got him to a hospital. He was barely had a pulse, and he really never recovered. But
lips were blue, the whole night. I get it.
I guess.
All right. But, hey, I need you to trot over to Afghanistan and explain to us what's going on with the Taliban.
Well, interestingly enough, the Ghani government refuses to cough up about 5,800 Taliban prisoners that they have. And apparently the Taliban leadership has not fully declared severability with Al-Qaeda, or if they did with Al-Qaeda, they may not have done it with the Haqqani network or the Pakistani Taliban or any other terror group. So the agreement was signed because the first part of the agreement says if there's no hostilities within a 7-day period, then it triggers signature. So the signatures did happen. And Trump has said that they will begin some troop withdrawals within 10 days, which is an outrageous statement to make because he telegraphed a couple of years ago, you never tell your enemies what you're going to do or not do, but he has done that. But it is also apparent that things are beginning to go a little bit sideways, that things all aren't copacetic. So Trump gets on the phone today with the head of the Taliban, and has a very nice conversation, whatever the hell that meant.
All right, hold on. You got to remember when Trump describes something, he's describing it using the language of Queens, New York. You got to remember that. And you got to put the Trump translator on. Okay? How many times did he say that the conversation with the president of Ukraine was a perfect conversation? That he's speaking Queens. That's all I want to say about that. I mean, I'm not debating the conversation. I haven't read it. I don't know what happened other than what you've just told me.
Well, he was on the phone call.
Our listeners jump to conclusions about what Trump said or how he described something. You got to use the Trump translator. You just got to do it. He speaks Queens.
Well, look, I'm from Queens, and I don't speak Queens. Okay.
You didn't live there your whole life. He did.
Well, he didn't either.
You didn't have to sit around and prove yourself like many did in Queens.
All right, Don, you can have it your way, but we're going to respectfully disagree.
I won that. Okay, that's fine.
You can have your win, okay? But I earnestly disagree with you on this one.
That's cool.
But cool. Anyway, he had a conversation.
The only thing we don't disagree on is my solution for the coronavirus and your youngest son.
Okay. So
where
Trump
we can't go on the radio.
Right. So Trump had a conversation with this Taliban leader, whom I don't even know his name, and I'm not even sure that Trump would necessarily know that he was speaking with the Taliban leader. I mean, how would you know? But apparently this conversation lasted 35 minutes, and the Taliban is still calling for the withdrawal of American troops, which I would say, you know what, dude? You don't tell us what to do. So we'll see where this necessarily goes. I have a very different opinion about all of this. I don't like any of this at all. I think we should have taken the $1.5 million Moab bombs and just bombed the crap out of the Taliban for the last year anyway, so we wouldn't even be in these conversations led by Zal Khalilzad, who I have zero regard for in the first place. But it is what it is. We are where we are. I don't know.
Can I submit that there's a possibility that during that 35-minute conversation with Yabba Dabba Doo, that there's a good possibility that Trump's people obtained an X and a Y coordinate of where the dude is?
Well, I mean, they can all be in Qatar. That's where Obama gave him an embassy.
But my point is, while it may not be a Moab, might be something else that might be utilized here before long if they don't start playing by the rules. Yeah, Don't know. Just thinking in Queens language.
Okay. Anyway, we will see where this necessarily happens. I've got a very different solution for all things Taliban. And everybody just wants to cut and run out of Afghanistan, when I would argue that we wasted 8 years there under the Obama administration in the first place. So, we'll see.
A lot of people have wasted a lot of time in Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm.
Problem is, you blow the damn place up, and it looks the same.
Yeah, but we wouldn't have Taliban.
Nothing to the landscape. Doesn't do anything to the landscape.
Well, we wouldn't have Taliban, we wouldn't have Al Qaeda, and we wouldn't have Qaeda.
I'm not disagreeing with you that Moabs are a beautiful thing.
Anyway,
especially when they land in Afghanistan.
I mean, this is kind of like cutting and running out of Vietnam, and unfinished business. I don't like it. I don't like it. But they didn't ask me. So anyway, that's the status of Afghanistan.
All right, we got about 8 minutes left. Let me very quickly, Denise, let the listeners know, any of you that are new to the show, go to Denise's website. I encourage you to do it. Sign up for her newsletter that she sends out. The website is founderscode.com. Founders as in more than one founder, code as in let's break the code.com. This is where Denise publishes all of her great work. And the beauty of it is that you can repost it, regurgitate it, retweet it, discuss it, and you can do so with a great deal of confidence because the level of integrity in the work that Denise does is unsurpassed. I think I can probably count on a half of a finger how many times in the last 6 to 8 years that she's had to alter or retract or change something around. So, point is, you're not going to get duped by trolls, fake news, bogus information, both on the left and the right side of the aisle. She does all the work for you, so you just look like a brilliant superstar when you start reposting it. So, founderscode.com. All right, Denise, you got about 6 minutes.
All right. There is chatter, and I just mean it as chatter, but it's actually been in print out there that I've from some interesting sources that Bloomberg is considering Andrew Yang, previous presidential candidate, to give everybody $1,000 a month or $1,000 a week, whatever the heck his plan was, as his vice president. Kind of interesting.
What would be interesting is if Andrew Yang, as Bloomberg's vice presidential running mate, would promise to give everybody $1,000 of Bloomberg's money.
But consider this one. Biden having Kamala Harris as his vice president.
That's two dangerous people. I think hey, Denise, let me ask you something. If Biden ends up being the nominee, I know you're going to agree with this comment, and so are our listeners. Trump needs to do the most epically devastating document declassification and dump that absolutely buries Biden. It needs to be historical.
Here's the thing, and I've talked to our mutual friend Tom Del Beccaro about this a couple of times, and that is we don't have a clue who Bernie Sanders' vice president possible co-ticket may be. He's got some interesting choices. Bloomberg, I don't think he's going to necessarily go anywhere, but it's been suggested that Andrew Yang would be his. But when it comes to not having a brokered convention in Milwaukee, so Sanders does not get the nomination, and we can clearly tell all the movement is that they're going to work diligently to take it away from him, puts Biden in the catbird seat. But does it? Because some interesting things are happening here with Biden. One is it's either this week or next week that his son Hunter has to show up, been compelled to show up in the court in Arkansas with all of his financials on the child support case for the illegitimate child that he has fathered. And in that, we don't know if Father Joe's name is going to be listed anywhere on any of these organizations that little Hunter is a part of or was a part of. I would argue we don't know all of that story yet. So there's one thing. The second thing is that Senator Ron Johnson has called a committee meeting to vote on the subpoenas for all things Burisma. And about 10 days ago, we have the former prosecutor in Ukraine that has formally reopened and filed complaints against the Bidens in Ukraine. So we may have an October surprise. meaning that we wouldn't necessarily have Biden as the nominee either in a brokered convention. So then that puts us back to Bloomberg, doesn't it?
Well, Andrew Yang, if he is the vice presidential running mate for Bloomberg, will he wear a tie if Bloomberg is elected and he becomes the vice president? Do you think he'll wear a tie?
I have no idea.
What are your thoughts on it, though?
It's superfluous. It's meaningless.
No, it's not, because I came up with it.
Well, it might. Then it's purposeful to you. It's meaningless to me.
Whoa, man! I got to stop by the CVS and get some Bactine for that one, Denise.
But think about this for a second. Let's play this thing out. Let's just make some assumptions. And how many times are we sideswiped by things going on in Washington, D.C.? See what I'm saying? So I don't want to be sideswiped, and I don't think our listeners want to be sideswiped either. So I'm suggesting some strategic thinking here on what the DNC and these powerful people are doing, because all of a sudden, Biden, who didn't think that they could necessarily get him even out of South Carolina, now just wins Oklahoma, you know? So,
yeah. I bet the Bernie bros are going to frickin' implode.
Well, isn't it fascinating that we have John Brennan, former CIA director, that endorsed Biden today? We had former director of the FBI, James Comey, who endorsed Biden today, of which the Biden campaign rejected and wanted to give the gift back, and they said so in a tweet. And then we have Susan Rice endorsing all things Biden today.
They all know, we got 30 seconds. They all know each other, ladies and gentlemen, and they've got something to hide.
Play it out, ladies and gentlemen. Play it out.
Yep. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to a very high-spirited Drive Time Sit Rep tonight, in which Denise let me win one argument and then caused me to race to CBS to get Bactine for a very stinging comment back to me. But I love her like a sister. Ladies and gentlemen, we hope we'll see you here next week. Take us home, Denise.
Thanks for being with us, and God bless America.
Check us out on the web at cowboylogic.us.